On the outside, my life as a flight attendant seemed like a constant adventure full of smiles and jet-setting glamour. But let me tell you, behind the scenes, there is a darker reality that I want to open up about today. Are you ready to hear the unfiltered truth? Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. My name is Feby, and on this channel I share stories about my non-linear life journey to encourage you to embrace your own journey and feel less alone in the process. In today's video, I want to dive into the dark side of flying as a flight attendant, and this is based on my personal experience flying as a flight attendant with Singapore Airlines for 4 years. I've actually talked a bunch about flying in many different videos, and I'll link the links in the description box down below and you can check them out if you're interested. Before we get started, I just wanted to say that the purpose of this video is not to discourage you from joining the airlines by any means. Choosing to fly has personally changed my life. That being said, the job is not an easy job. Far from it. There are so many aspects to it behind the scenes that could potentially be damaging. So in today's video, I want to share my perspective from this lens. You can take this insight, decide for yourself whatever you want to do and use the information for. I'm going to structure this video into 6 key points, and I will share and expand on each point as we go along. The first one is bullying. This one is so real. I remember that up until I quit, which was pre-COVID, bullying was still normalized in the environment where I worked at. There's this term that is familiar amongst crew, which is zapping, which is basically the same thing as bullying. How this usually goes is the more senior ones bullying the more junior ones. The bullying could come in the form of snarky comments, gaslighting, manipulation, or verbally abusive or rude comments. I remember when I went for my second trial flight while I was still a trainee, I got bullied on board by a more senior stewardess and I cried on board. That was the first and last time I cried throughout my flying life. I was reprimanded throughout the whole flight for not knowing what I was doing, for being slow. I mean, that was only the second flight I had ever operated in my entire life. It's all about repetition since we were on the operationalization front and she forgot what she was like on day one. I remember the peak was I was in the cabin working with her and she asked me to bring her a 7-Up. So I went back to the galley, take the 7-Up and bring it to her. And she lost it because I used my hand to pass the 7-Up along to her from the tray instead of handing the tray and have the 7-Up on the tray for her to take it. And she yelled at me. I, at that time, I think was just not mentally strong enough. So I went to the washroom and cried. It's so funny, like now that I look back. At that time, it was huge. And I know that from a service best practice, it is a good practice, but I think the how was a little bit uncalled for because she yelled at me in the cabin. Yeah, there were so many other experiences, but this I think is the most ingrained in my mind because it was during my early flying days. I worked with her on the way back to Singapore, and I remember hearing some stories from the crew members who worked with her on the way up. I think they knew that I cried, so they made me a hot chocolate. They even wrote me this card, which I still keep until this day. Like I just took it out from like my treasure box, and that was like one of my experiences with bullying. To top this off, chances are no one will back you up in a more actionable way. Sure, you can try to escalate, but sometimes it will lead to nowhere, and I think a part of it is also because it is a pretty normalized behavior. It happens and it's part of the culture. I heard though these days things are slightly better, so I'm hopeful that the culture has improved. I mean, please respect one another as a human being. Like you've been here longer doesn't mean that you have the right to bully others. Number 2 is gossips are normalized and rampant, which also creates a toxic environment. I think a large part of it is because we always fly with different people 95% of the time. Let's be real, creating meaningful relationships takes time. Getting to know one another takes time. Imagine in this environment, I would meet a group of new people and I would have to work with them for 14 hours straight, as an example. Don't get me wrong here, I'm very grateful of the skills that it taught me from having to work and adapt to different people every single flight while I was flying. But at the same time, this microwave style relationship also has its own downside. Like, you want to make things less awkward, you want to get comfortable with each other as soon as possible while you're working. It takes time to get to know one another, so most of the time you would end up gossiping. You would talk about your previous flights, weird passengers you met on board, or weird fellow crew members that you meet on board, and sometimes you don't even know who the other person is referring to me, it usually is far from positive and uplifting. Of course, there are also other types of conversations. I am just saying that this is something that happens a lot, at least when I was flying, and I'm just sharing it from this perspective. Number 3 is being submissive at work. The airline industry could be hierarchical in a way, and things work based on your seniority, which could be in a form of your rank, or in my case, your uniform color, your tenure or your staff number, or even age sometimes. And I think that it was more prominent for my case too, because I was working with an Asian company. And how this translates into the day-to-day is what the senior says goes. And I think I eventually developed the habit of keeping my thoughts to myself, because I feel like my opinions as a more junior crew member would not be welcome. I think I internalized this a lot personally, and it took me some time to reprogram my mind. After I quit flying, I decided to pursue my MBA. The MBA program is so different from the flying life. It was such a 180-degree shift, and I personally struggled with it a lot, because in the MBA program, you're encouraged to speak up, to voice your opinion, to develop your leadership skills, challenge other people's thoughts, to embrace diversity of thoughts. So it was very different. The type of behavior that was encouraged and welcomed and appreciated is very different as compared to the things that would be considered as good behaviors when I was still flying. After I quit flying, I realized how much flying has changed me for the worse and the better. For the things that have changed me for the worse, I really worked hard to unlearn those behaviors and try to reinvent myself and grow from that version of myself. So that was really a lot of inner work, and it's still a work in progress, I would say, until today. Number 4 is working while sustaining physical injury. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of this point, if you're still watching, maybe consider liking and subscribing to the channel. I would really appreciate that. I think for this point, the main reason is because the bulk of our pay comes from when we operate a flight. So if a crew member is not able to operate a flight for whatever reason, that would significantly impact their take-home pay. I'm not talking about being down like with fever or catching a cold. I'm talking about working while being physically injured. Like you pull your back, you have a slip disc, so many other things. Flying can be an extremely physically demanding job. From lifting the meals to the oven racks and taking stuff from the galley compartments, helping to lift passengers' bags are heavy, or even like pushing and pulling the meal carts, like it is legit heavy. Not to mention the need to do everything fast. This also adds to the rhythm of the job, which also makes crew members more prone to injury. The 5th point is couldn't say no right away. I think this is more relevant when it comes to interacting with the passengers. Partially, it's also because I was in a service-oriented job, obviously, and also because I was working for an Asian airline. So I think there's also this Asian culture that plays a part in this particular experience. For example, if a passenger asks me for something and I don't have it, I can't say right away that, sorry, unfortunately, we don't have that. I would need to say, yes, let me check and get back to you. To me, it doesn't make sense, because why waste the passenger's time? Also, you might think that it's easy to just pull the stunt and walk one round and then get back to the passengers. Imagine if it's a full flight. I just didn't think that it was the most efficient approach. The longer I flew, the more I took my own approach in this regard, because I just wanted to be efficient. Instead of doing that or pulling that stunt, I would just say, sorry, we don't have it, unfortunately, and offer alternative there and then. So case closed. I can move on to the next thing, and I don't waste the passenger's time and have them wait it out for the thing that we don't have on board to begin with. When you're 35,000 feet above sea level, like you either have it or you don't. And if you don't, there are alternatives up for grabs. The last one is ego complex, because no one keeps you on check. For this one, I think it has something to do with accountability to yourself and accountability to others. And I think a part of this is because no one really has that sense of camaraderie, because you would always fly with different people. And maybe this is most relevant to the more junior crew members, because the turnover is obviously higher when you're junior, because it takes 5 to 7 years on average to get promoted to the next level. So maybe like the senior crew members, they have different perspective, but I'm just sharing this from my own perspective. It is a lot of ego complex, and I feel like some crew members are married to their seniority and their rank, which I don't think is the healthiest. I think a lot of people think that they could be mean to others and don't have to pay the price. They think their seniority and their rank and their uniform color give them a free pass to treat people however they want. A lot of people think that they don't have to pay for the price, they don't have to be kept accountable, so they think that it's okay to do it. But it's not okay, and please don't do that. Hey friends, that is all I have for today's video. So to recap, in today's video we discussed the dark side of flying as a flight attendant that is not really talked about, and that includes 6 different points that are 1. Bullying, 2. How gossips are rampant, 3. Being submissive at work, 4. Working while sustaining physical injury, 5. Can't say no right away, and 6. Ego complex because no one keeps you on check. Now I have a question for you. Which part about flying as a flight attendant that surprises you the most? Or if you're a crew member or used to be one, what was your experience like? Let me know in the comment section down below because I'd love to hear from you. If you find this video useful and insightful in any way, please like and subscribe to the channel so we can help each other embrace our own journey and feel less alone in the process. Okay, thank you for watching. Have a good one, and I will see you in the next video. Bye now.